Guys, thank you so much for joining us online today at Southview. We have a great message prepared for you today. If you want more information about who we are, what we do, please visit our website. Thanks again.
I am, for those of you that don't know me, I'm sure that most of you do, I'm Pastor Josh. I'm the associate pastor here. Kind of new to this position a little bit, but something that I love to do. And something awesome I get to talk about is something that I love to talk about. I know that for some of you, and my wife will be in the third service, and she will attest that I'm not really a talker. I joke. I love this. Okay, I got to get going. I'm going to stop with the Pastor Mark jokes. Okay, so all right. So last week, I love to be able to do this. I love to be able to get up here and talk about things, because what God has given me and what God has done in my life is so impactful and has made such a difference in me that I want to share it, and that I want people to know, and that I want people to understand that what I have and what God has given me is available for you. It's something that you can grab a hold of. Not my story, but something that you can grab a hold of. Last week, Pastor Mark started this really short series called For God So Loved He Gave, and he got to talk about tithing, and he got to bring kind of a challenging word to some. For some folks, it was like, man, great, here we go. We're going to give me your money. But for others, it was that challenge of, am I really bringing and doing what I'm supposed to do? So this week, I get to talk about something else that God gave, and that's the ability for evangelism. Now, if you're like me, the word evangelism is just like, ugh. I hate the word. I do. I know it's probably not the right thing for a pastor to say, but I'm new, so give me a little grace. I don't like the word evangelism. I don't like the words discipleship. They're so Christian and just so studious and just so, ugh. So I like to refer to evangelism as storytelling. Now, I'm not talking like Aesop's fables, and I'm not talking about urban legends. I'm talking about your story. You don't have to be an evangelist. You just have to tell your story. You just have to be a storyteller. Evangelism is nothing more than having a zealous or passionate, burning desire for something. That's it. That's evangelism. Enough. I mean, there's nothing else to say. And being an evangelist is preaching the gospel. So if I have a burning desire for God, then I go out and speak about God, I become an evangelist. I walk in evangelism and I become an evangelist. It's that simple. But when we put these labels on it like, oh, evangelism, man, it just gets so bleh. It gets so funky. I don't like it. So I decided to take a little bit of a different route with this. And my title for the sermon is For God So Loved He Gave a Story and a Strut. Now, when I talk about a story and a strut, so I just explained to you what the story is. The story is your story. But what is the strut? What am I talking about? Look, you guys ready on this camera? Look, here's the thing. Back in the late 1970s, there was this movie that came out called Saturday Night Fever. And in the first 5 minutes, because I pulled it up and I watched this, in the first 5 minutes, they have the best shot of John Travolta. You know, they're flying over the city, they're looking at the bridges and everything, and then all of a sudden there's this low shot of the sidewalk and you see these boots, and it just kind of pans up. And what do you see? You see John Travolta, as it gets about knee height, you see this swinging paint can. You see this paint can swinging, and as it continues to pan up, here's what you see is John Travolta. That's it. Why is that so important? Because what you see in his face. Look, I watched this thing like 3 times. My wife will tell you. I just kept running it back because there's John Travolta. He's like, yep. Because he knew, whatever it was, he had this look on his face. He's like, looking around, checking things out. That's what it is. He was confident in what he was doing. He was confident in his walk. He knew who he was. Look, before Christ, in the BC days, my BC days, it wasn't a story and a strut that because I was confident in my walk with God. It was a story and a strut because I was cocky. I was cocky in myself. I was headstrong. I was like, look, I know what I am, and I know what I have that you need. I may not be Mr. Right, but I'm Mr. Right now, so why don't we talk? That's how it was. You know, I used my story and I used my strut to get the things that I wanted to benefit me. But after God unlocked some things in my life, I started to realize that my story and my strut was no longer to build me up, was no longer to get the things that I wanted. It was to get it was to provide the opportunity for others to see, hey, that dude was just like me. And now he's not like me. But I want to have what he has. That's what the story in the strut is about. God took me from cocky to confident before and after Christ. I found my validation in him rather than finding my validation in the people in the club or in the people in the bars. I still walk the same, but my posture is different. I convey something different. Now I convey Christ in me. Now people aren't like, man, what's that dude? Why is he walking in here like he owns the place? And wanting to come over and just, have me talk. Now it's, man, that dude, he doesn't own the place, but he knows the guy that does. He knows the guy that has the key. He knows the bouncer and lets you in past the velvet rope. Look, evangelism or storytelling or strutting, it's easy. It's as easy or as difficult as you want it to be. It truly is. It's as easy or as difficult. Look, all you have to do, evangelism is not always standing up here behind this pulpit or standing on a street corner with those old school little sandwich boards screaming about the end of the world. It's not always about that. Is there a place for that? Look, if that's what God called somebody to do, then sure, man. Who am I to judge? Evangelism is simply telling my story to you. Look, God's work in your life is not dependent on me. God is working in your life. What my story does and what me talking to you about my story does and evangelizing to you, all that does is give God the step in the door. Look, we have got to get past this idea that it's our responsibility to save people. We don't save people. God saves people. We just provide the opportunity. We just talk, man. That's all we got to do. So get past the idea of, I got to save people. I got to add souls. No, evangelize. Tell your story. Do what God has called you to do. Share the goodness in your life. That's all. That's it. That's evangelism. That's all that there is. The bottom line is, when you own your story, when you know what God has done in your life, there's nothing that anyone can take away from you. You can sit here and sit down with any of us or with anybody, and we can quote scripture all day long. And if you get around somebody that knows the Bible, that can argue with you, it will shut you down. Because arguments will stop you from doing that, especially if you're new. But here's what I'm going to tell you. I can seek in here and find why God has changed my life. But when I come and I sit down with you and I talk to you, you can't deny me. You can't come against my story because it's my story. God did it for me. You can't tell me that I'm wrong. Really? You can't tell me that God found me in the bottom of a bottle. You can't tell me that he didn't. You can't sit there and try and convince me that what happened is just coincidence. There is no coincidence. God saved me. God did these things. I'm going to tell you my story. Come against it, man, because guess what? I don't care. I don't care what you think about me. Man, it got quiet in here. But I don't. That's just how it is. A couple weeks ago, we had Dave Harvey here, and he was so amazing. He said, there's glory in your story, and if there's glory in our story, then why aren't we telling it? If we want to sit here and confess to be Christians, why aren't we telling our story then? I'm not talking about grabbing the Bible and beating people over the head with verses. There's a time and a place for those things, but I'm talking about simple evangelism, which is just being somebody that talks, that wants to get to know somebody, that wants to have a cup of coffee with somebody. That is evangelism. Quit trying to make it difficult. No one can come against your story. No one can come against your calling. A lot of you who have been here for a while have heard my story. If you were here on the last Legacy Night, you heard part of my story. And I've talked about my dad a lot. And my dad's this great dude, but I have some pictures if they can come up. This was my dad. This is my dad. This is my dad 21 years ago. This was my dad. This is my dad 21 years ago. That's exactly right. That is you're right. But here's the thing. This was my dad 21 years ago. 21 years ago, preaching to those who can't be preached to. Going where I would venture to say a large portion of our friends, our family, our congregation wouldn't go. But here's the thing. When I talked to him about sharing these pictures, because I wanted to make sure that he was cool with it, and he was, one of the things that he had said was, you have to understand, it wasn't about the bike. It wasn't about riding. That was just a tool to open the door. It wasn't about that. And it wasn't just about preaching to bikers. Because they went to the Union Gospel Mission and they preached to the people at the Gospel Mission. They picked people up from the Gospel Mission to take them to church to preach to them, then took them back. They preached it. They would share the gospel in the grocery store, at the park, at the library. They would share the gospel wherever they were because God called them to share the gospel wherever they were. He didn't need a pulpit. He didn't need title. He didn't need anything besides what God put in his heart. This picture on the left of him and his motorcycle, that was his tool. That was his tool. Look, 21 years ago, I'm 19, 20 years old. This embarrassed me. It did. This embarrassed me. Because first of all, my dad's a preacher. That's a tough enough label to have. But then you throw in there, my dad's a biker. Man, with a big old handlebar mustache. But here's what I'm going to tell you. When you hear this man's story, that is a great man. That is a man that at 10 years old in Calumet City, Indiana, started working, cleaning the bars. That is a man growing up in West Virginia would watch the coal miners come home and stand there and wait for his dad to come home, wondering where his dad was until he came home. That's a man that preached that preached from a Nazarene pulpit, and then God called him to talk to those who most of us wouldn't. That's a man who in this picture with him in the cowboy hats just playing at a revival in a park. In this picture down in the lower side, well, before I get there, the one in the middle, the lady off to his side, that's my stepmom. That's my stepmom that God called them. It wasn't just him. God called them to do it, to step out. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to go on the record. I have never given that woman her just due. But that woman has provided for me, and she is a good woman, and she has helped my dad, and she has encouraged him to step out and to walk out and to do it. Together they do ministry. Together in this bottom picture, that's at Sturgis, South Dakota. That's at Sturgis, South Dakota, playing Christian music, ministering to bikers, people walking in drunk, not knowing why they're being called. That's evangelism. Wherever you are, in the prisons, on the street corner, at your desk, that's evangelism. You don't have to go to Sturgis. You don't have to wear a killer cowboy hat and a cutoff shirt. You don't have to do that. There's no requirements. The requirements are you tell your story. What's the tool that you're using? What's the tool that God's given you? But look, you could sit there and you can look at those pictures. And you think, man, that's pretty cool. But if they walked away at the end of the day and didn't walk it out, it's all for nothing. It's all for nothing. You cannot sit here and on a Sunday and be a holy roller and then walk out the door and on Monday be on a highway to hell. You can't do it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You can't sit here and bless people and then turn around and curse people. You can't do it. It doesn't work. Your testimony doesn't work then. Your evangelism doesn't work then. It's just empty words. You're planting a seed of despair rather than a seed of hope. You can't do it. It doesn't work. Talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. Your actions speak. How you're living for God speaks. How would I be if I sat here and brought a message and then turned around and cursed my wife and kids when I got home? Would that give me any clout with you? Would that make you understand me? No. But you got to see that I'm a broken man, that I was a broken man, that I'm healed, that God is walking me through something, that I'm not perfect, that I still struggle, but I'm going to tell you my story, because in my story, it may fall deaf on 99% of you, but one person may resonate with it, and that's enough. That's enough. What's the real you? Why are we not doing it? Why are we not telling our story? Look, in Mark 5:20, the story of Jesus freeing the man with demons and legion. I mean, a lot of us have seen this story, but I want to focus you on verse 20. Because after the man had gotten free, he wanted to go with Jesus. But Jesus said no. He told him to go and tell what he had done. He said, and he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled. Y'all, Jesus made an evangelist that day. He didn't tell him, okay, just go back to your house, you're good. No, he said, go and tell people. And this guy ran and told people. He ran and said, this is what happened. Look, I'm this crazy guy that was up here. I'm this guy that couldn't do anything, that no one wanted to be around. I was in chains. I'd break the chains. I lived with the dead. This was me. Do you think for one second that when he got back to the town that he was like, okay, I'm going to go and be humble? No. I promise you that dude was like, hey, here I am. Look at me. Look at my walk. Yep, I got something. You got something. I got to tell you what happened because I'm not going to shut up. You want me to shut up? Send me back to the graveyard because it ain't going to happen. Even then, I'll keep talking. He was walking it out. He told people what God did for him. He didn't hide it. He was overflowing with it. Why are we any different? How many of us can say that God has pulled us out of the pit or pulled us out of the grave, and yet we want to hold that, we want to keep that? There's stories like this throughout the Bible. There's stories like this throughout this church, but yet we sit here and we hide it. I don't want to tell you my story because I don't want you to judge me. Every day we have choices that we make. You got a choice this morning. You can hit the snooze button again. You get a second cup of coffee. Come to first, second, third service, whatever. You have all these choices to make. Say thank you to somebody. Hold a door for somebody. That's a conscious decision that you make. But when it comes to our salvation, we're scared. We're scared to talk about it. Why? Why? Ask yourself that question. Why are you scared to talk about it? I'll tell you. Because we're afraid to be ostracized. We're afraid to be set out. We're afraid to be pushed away. We're afraid to be made to feel alone. But let me ask you this question. Would you rather feel ostracized, put out, pushed away by the world or by your Savior? Would you rather feel like, oh man, you know what, I lost a couple of friends, or oh man, I lost eternity? What are you holding it back for? God didn't do it for you so that you could lock it up. God did it for you so that you could push it out and tell everybody, oh, but they don't want to hear my story. So what? So what? Why are you worried about what they're going to say? Look, we spend so much time trying to make ourselves comfortable, trying to make people around us feel comfortable, trying to make sure that everybody's okay because of this or because of that. And I get it. There's a place for that. There's compassion there. But at the end of the day, my walk with God is the most important thing in my life. And if that makes you uncomfortable, change seats. I'm sorry. Maybe this word is offensive to some, and I don't know. I'm not going to apologize for it. What I'm going to apologize for is that it resonated with you and you can't chew on it yet. I'm planting a seed. I'm planting a positive seed. Because some of you will go home and be like, man, that was not cool. Okay. God gave me this. He gave me this Bible. He gave me the words in there. He gave me my freedom. I've stopped trying to live for myself. I've stopped trying to take my story and tell my story to build me up, to edify me, to make me famous here. Look, you will never, if that's what you do, you will never be as famous in this world as you are in the Father's eyes. You are a superstar. You are a rising, you are a shooting star. God has called you. He knows your name. The dude that put all of this together, everything, knows who Josh Clendenen is. He knows me. And if you don't know him, come talk to me and I'll introduce you. Because at the end of the day, it's not my job to save you, but it's my job to tell you about the salvation that I got through him so that the freedom that I have can fall on each and every one of you. That's evangelism. We're building our testimony so that it glorifies God. That's all it boils down to. Glorifying God. Telling our story that people understand. Why do you think Jesus taught in parables? It says it in the Bible. So that people would understand, how can I be more relatable by just being me? Just got to be me. There's a song about that? Just got to be me. Look, the time has passed for us to sit idly by and watch someone else do it. The time has passed for everybody in this congregation, for everybody online. The time has passed for you just to sit there and try and stay warm by someone else's fire. You can't watch Pastor Eddie preach with this fire and fury that he has. You can't watch Pastor Mark preach and be like, man, yes. You can't listen to me bring this word on evangelism and be like, okay, and just stand close to us. Because here's the thing, when you get up into heaven and you stand face to face with Christ, when you are looking in his fiery eyes and you tell him, man, you know what? I stood close to Pastor Mark. Do you think he's going to say, well done? No. No. You can't stand next to somebody and expect to be warmed by their fire. The fire has to be kindled inside you, fanned by the Holy Spirit, and blown out everywhere. You can't do it just by coming here on a Sunday and checking the box. That's not how it works. That's not how Christianity works. That's not how evangelism works. Evangelism is very simple. It's telling my story. It's changing my strut. It's walking it out. Oh, well, what if I'm wrong? What if you're wrong? Again, it's your story. What if someone comes against me? Well, guess what? Psalm 37:23. Steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. God already knows what's going to happen. He knows what's coming against you. Do you think for 1 second that he's not equipped for that? Evangelism is checking yourself, checking your belief. Where are you? Where's your faith level? If I believe that, look, Charles Spurgeon said this, all his course of life is graciously ordained, and in loving kindness, all is fixed, settled, and maintained. No reckless fate, no fickle chances rules us. Every step is the subject of divine decree. Y'all, nothing is by accident. Nothing is coincidence. God knows your thoughts. He knows your choices before you even make them. You're not getting one over on him. Just going to tell you. You're not getting when you think, oh, it's okay. I'm just going to duck over here and do this. God's like, okay, and I'm going to be standing right there with you. You're not fooling him. So why do we continue to try? Nothing's by accident. You're not in that job that you hate because it was the only job that was available. You're there because God placed you there, because there are people there, and I promise you this, listen to my words. There are people in that room or that office that you work in that you are the only person that they will hear about the goodness of God from. And when you don't tell your story, guess what? You're robbing them of that blessing. You're robbing them of God's work in their life. God doesn't need you to do it. He chose you to do it. But if you don't do it, guess what? He's going to find someone that will. So you might as well buck up and get ready to go because it's time to move. When the cloud moved, the Israelites moved. When it was time to go, they went. They didn't hang around. God is using you. He will use you. Evangelism is not your story. It's not about you. You have to understand that, but that sounds really confusing. No, I know it does. But it's not about you. It's about your story. My dad and my stepmom, it wasn't about them. It was about a calling on their life that God gave them. That said, go to these places, reach out to these people that I can never reach out to. Talk to these people, show them the goodness and the mercy. Show them truth. That's what it was about for them. Truth. 3 things that they talked about. Love. They showed all these people love, forgiveness, and acceptance. Look, here's the deal. And my dad told me this last night. It hit me like a freight train. If Jesus loved people, and Jesus forgave people, and Jesus accepted people, why in the world is that not good enough for me to do? Man, think about that. Love, acceptance, forgiveness, those 3 things. That's in your story because that's what God did for you. That's what God did for me. Man, God wrecked me. He wrecked me. It's about standing up and standing out. You're not called to be a part of the crowd. You're called to be something different. Your story just isn't here on Sunday. Man, your story is at the gas station. Your story is at the workplace. Your story is everywhere that you go. Every opportunity where you go. Oh, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be the person that shares Jesus all the time. Why not? Well, someone might get offended. So what? Well, someone might not like me. Who cares? What are you doing? Where's the acceptance? Are you doing it for the acceptance of people or are you doing acceptance for God? Look, your story is everywhere that you go. Every step that you take, I almost went into an old song. Thank you. Look, you can't outrun your story. Your story literally, quite literally, is in front of you with every step. Every step you take writes another page of your story. You can't outrun your story, and you can't outrun God. You can't outrun Him. You will never be more famous than you are in the eyes of the Father. You will never have more blessings. You will never have more than you have with the Father. I'd love for you all to stand as we get ready to close, because I want to ask you a couple questions. Is God worthy of your discomfort in this world? Is He worthy of you feeling ostracized by your friends and your family, set out, left alone? Are you willing to go it alone? Are you willing to go it alone? Does God deserve does He deserve all of you, every bit of you, 100% of you? Or does He just deserve the pieces that you want to give Him? Was your Savior hanging on a criminal's tree worth 100% of you? Jesus didn't give Himself. He didn't give all of Himself for just little pieces of you. He didn't give Himself for the pieces that you don't want to hang on to. He gave Himself for everything that you are. He gave Himself that He could bless you more than you'll ever do yourself. Jesus gave all of Himself for all of you. Father, I pray that today you ignite the evangelists, that people rise up, that they stand up and step out, that no longer do they shy away, that they run from the world and into the arms of the Father. No story is too small, no story is too insignificant, God, but it's your story in our lives. Father, ignite them, fan the flames. Lord, bring revival.